Volume 1. The Hot Blood of Young People Chapter 12 _ How Are Bad People Made One. Let him swallow his words. Lao Fat, you are just too impulsive and have forgotten what Brother Chong told you. Hurry up. Dong Gu will be in a hurry. The one who spoke was none other than Gao Chong. He Howren looked back at the person who was speaking and saw that number 7 or 8 had walked out behind him. The leader was a young man about 1.77 meters tall, and it was him who had spoken just now. He Howren laughed loudly. Your boss thinks too highly of me. More than 10 people came to invite me. If I don't go, it seems like it would be a disgrace. Before he could finish speaking, he shot at Li Shuang like an arrow and punched his face. But he underestimated Li Shuang. Although his body was a little fat, he dodged nimbly, dodged He Howren's blow, and took time to punch Li Shuang in the stomach. He Howren knew what was difficult to please, so he had to retreat. More than 10 people surrounded him in the middle. Li Shuang looked at him with an evil smile. Hee. I will remember the greeting gift of brother's punch. He Howren sighed secretly, knowing that he couldn't leave today if he wanted to. It was no accident that Xie Wendong could rise rapidly in number 1 middle school in just a few days. Nodding, He Howren chest out his chest and said, Take me to meet your boss. I also want to meet this person. Li Shuang also admired He Howren a little. The other party showed no fear in the face of more than 10 of his people. He picked up his mother's finger and said, N. Brother is single enough, he is a man. Brothers, let's go. Li Shuang, Gao Qiang and others took He Howren to a restaurant with a sign saying it was closed. Li Shuang pushed the door open and said, Please, Brother Howren. He Howren looked at Li Shuang, hesitated for a moment, and strode in. Li Shuang and others followed in and locked the door with a backhand. He Howren froze, looked back, and thought to himself, At worst, I'll just work hard. What are you afraid of? Thinking of this, he smiled and came to the back room under Li Shuang's guidance. The room was not big, but there were many people standing there. There was a young man sitting on a leather chair in the middle. He was about 16 or 17 years old. He leaned on his head with one hand and looked like he was resting. He Howren put his fear behind him and asked loudly, You must be Xie Wendong? As soon as he finished speaking, a person came up next to him and slapped He Howren in the face. Damn you talk to Dong Gu like this. He Howren wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, ignored the person next to him, stared at Xie Wendong and said, I wonder if this is how Dong Gu treats guests. Fuck you. Kid. You want to beat me up? The person next to him raised his hand and was about to hit him. Xie Wendong opened his eyes and waved his hand. When the man saw it, he retreated. Looking at He Howren, Xie Wendong smiled and said, N. He's a man. Lu Jinglong is lucky to have a brother like you. Xiao Shuang. Move a chair and let the guest we invited stand there. Li Shuang agreed and soon took a chair and placed it behind He Howren. Brother Howren, please sit down. He Howren thought for a moment, sat on it and got straight to the point. Dong Gu invited me just to sit idly, right? Say what you have to say. Xie Wendong gently raised the handle of the chair with his fingers. I want the Black Dragon Brotherhood to be expelled from number 1 middle school. Volume 1 Juvenile Blood Chapter 13 _ How the Villain is Made. He Howren was startled by a word. In a crazy tone, he sneered, Brother Dong's bold words are admirable, but I'm afraid I can't help you with this, and there's nothing I can do to help. Xie Wendong shook his head and said, You can help. As long as you invite Lu Jinglong and the backbone of the Black Dragon Brotherhood to come here, it will be a great help to me. As soon as He Howren's face changed, he said angrily, Is this why Brother Dong invited me here? Xie Wendong said, You are a smart man. I should not have to make it very clear. He Howren stood up, stared and exclaimed, It's impossible for me to betray Brother Long and my brothers in the fraternity. I wouldn't do that if you killed me. Brother Dong looks down on me. Xie Wendong smiled, waved his hand and said, Sit down. Don't get too excited. I'm sure you'll do it. He Howren sat down in his chair, looked at Xie Wendong, closed his eyes and stopped talking. Li Shuang got angry when he saw his appearance and shouted, You pretend to be such a big head of garlic. Me, Li Shuang, who spoke, looked at Xie Wendong's eyes and dared not say the following words. Xie Wendong said gently, I know your mother died early, and it was your father who brought you up. You have a sister in the second year of junior high school. She's very cute. You don't want to see anything happen to her, do you? With that, he took out a small jade pendant from his pocket and kept shaking with the red rope in his hand. He Howren heard Xie Wendong mention his sister and opened his eyes. When he saw the jade pendant in Xie Wendong's hand, he stood up and walked forward. Just after 2 steps, he was pressed on the ground by Li Shuang and others. He could not move the stall and shouted, Xie Wendong, my mother, what have you done to my sister? Xie Wendong smiled and said, She is very safe now. My brother is good to protect her, but this is temporary. Her safety mainly depends on your performance. He Howren exclaimed, Xie Wendong, what a hero you are. If you dare to come at me, don't touch my sister. Xie Wendong stood up, squatted down beside He Howren, looked at He Howren, who was pressed on the ground, and said, You have a mistake I must help you correct. I'm not a hero, you remember? I'm a bad guy. I have your sister. Anything can happen. Do you want to save your sister or your friend? I'll give you time to think about it. He Howren squeezed 2 words out of his teeth. Animal! Without getting angry, Xie Wendong waved to Li Shuang and said, Let him leave. 1 night is enough for him to think about. Li Shuang and others let go of He Howren, who stood up, stared at Xie Wendong and said, Where is my sister? I want to see her. Xie Wendong shook his head and said, This won't work. You can go now. By the way, you'd better not call the police. If you do that, your sister will disappear from the world. And you can't come up with a piece of evidence that I did it. You only have 1 night to think about it. Give me the news by noon tomorrow, or I can't guarantee your sister's safety. Remember, you go. He Howren wanted to say anything more, but he was pulled out by Li Shuang and others. As He Howren walked home, his tears fell to the ground. He knew that he was 4 years younger than himself. Volume 1 Juvenile Blood Chapter 13_How the Villain is Made. The 3-year-old sister, who has suffered a lot without her mother since she was a child, said that she could not let her sister suffer any harm. Absolutely not. After He Howren left, Xie Wendong breathed a sigh of relief, smiled at everyone and said, Let's go and see our little guest. Everyone burst out laughing. When they walked out of the hotel, Gao Chong found the owner of the restaurant, gave him 500 quick money and told him to come back tomorrow night. The boss smiled and kept nodding. Xie Wendong and others came to the Xinshin Billiards Hall next to number 2 middle school, and several people stood outside. When they saw that it was Xie Wendong, they bent down in unison and said, Hello, Brother Dong. Xie Wendong nodded and asked, Is the little girl all right? A brother wept and said, She's fine. She's energetic, and she's been messing around until now. Brother Dong, look at my face. This is her masterpiece. Xie Wendong looked carefully and saw that there were 4 blood marks on the brother's face. He smiled, patted him on the shoulder and walked into the billiard hall. Li Shuang came over and scratched his head and laughed and said, You really suck. The latter looks aggrieved. Xie Wendong walked inside and his 3 eyes were squatting on the ground smoking with a bored face. Seeing Xie Wendong, he strangled his cigarette, stood up and hurriedly asked, Brother Dong, how's it going? Did his brother say yes? Xie Wendong shook his head and said, This man is very emotional. I'll give him 1 night to think about it. If nothing happens, there should be no problem. 3 Eyes asked, If he is determined to refuse, what shall we do with this girl? Xie Wendong said with a smile, He will not refuse. I have checked in the past 3 days. He loves his sister very much. If he really says no, the girl will be your wife. I think it looks all right. 3 Eyes were flushed by Xie Wendong as a joke, and he bowed his head and said, Brother Dong, don't make fun of me. Xie Wendong said, Come on, take me to see the little girl. 3 Eyes nodded, and Xie Wendong and others went into the inner room. Just pushed open the door. A large pillow flew head-on. 3 Eyes startled, hurriedly grabbed with his hands. I saw a 14 or 15-year-old girl with big eyes standing on the bed with her hands close to her waist and shouting, "You son of a bitch who looks like Erlang. Let me go, or I'll let my brother know and beat you to death." After listening to the three eyes, his eyes stared round and shouted, "Get your ass down here. Oops, oops, my bed. How dare you step on my bed with your shoes on? You, no, no, no. No, no, no." Three eyes strode past, regardless of the little girl's face surprised, picked up the waist and threw it on the ground, heartache to look at the mercilessly trampled sheets. The little girl stood up, patted her little ass, ran behind her three eyes and kicked hard. "You shameless bastard. Don't you dare hit me. I'll kick you. I'll kick you." After kicking, there was no reaction after 3 glances, but I kicked a few more feet, and the more I kicked, the more smooth the leg. Three eyes suddenly turned around. The veins on his forehead bounced. "I'm going to kill you, little leprechaun." Seeing the three-eyed gaze, Li Shuang quickly came forward and hugged him. "Forget it. Why are you having such an atmosphere with a little girl?" Hearing Li Shuang say this, Three Eyes calmed down and sat on the bed breathing fire, gasping for breath. Xia Wendong smiled and thought that this little girl was so unusual that she was so angry that she was rare in the world. Volume 1 Juvenile Blood Chapter 13 _ How the Villain is Made. Thinking of this, Xia Wendong laughed and said, "What a good show! It's a pity that the show is over so soon. What a pity!" The little girl looked at the laughing boy. She felt that she was less than 2 years older than herself, and she didn't look terrible. She was daring and asked loudly, "Why are you laughing? You're not afraid to laugh your big teeth off." Xia Wendong smiled at the girl and said, That's nice. Much better than your brother. But the girl had better be quiet, or who dares to be your boyfriend in the future?" The little girl was surprised and asked, "Do you know my brother?" Xia Wendong nodded and said, "Yes. Your brother asked me to take care of you, and will take you wherever you want to go." After hearing this, Gao Chong said hurriedly, "Brother Dong, this is no good." No, no, no. No, no, no." Xia Wendong interrupted him and said, "It's all right." He turned to the girl and said, "What do you think? Where do you want to play?" The little girl turned her eyes and said, "I want to go roller skating." Xia Wendong was stunned. He didn't know how to play this sport. He smiled and said, "Brother Zhang, I think you are good at roller skating among us, so you can go with the little girl. I have something to do, so I have to go." Then he said hello to everyone and went home, leaving Three Eyes dumbfounded, and Li Shuang, Gao Chong, who were laughing badly on one side. "Is it funny? Fat, how do I think you laugh the most?" "Come on, brother Three Eyes." Lao Chong smiled. "Why didn't you say so? Hey, don't scratch my ear." The screams of Li Shuang and the innocent laughter of the little girl came from the inner room. The next day, Xia Wendong came out from home ahead of time and went to the Three Eyes for a turn before going to school. As soon as he arrived at school, He Haoran called him to the woods. Xia Wendong was prepared and asked, "Brother, have you made up your mind?" He Haoran frowned and made up his mind and said, "Yes, Brother Dong. I'll lead the dragon at 6 in the evening." Brother Long, they go to the hotel. "I hope Brother Dong will also talk about credibility and let my sister go." Xia Wendong said, "Don't worry about this. As long as you can really do it, I will let people go without saying a word." He Haoran asked with a sigh of relief, "My sister?" No, no, no. Is she all right now?" Xia Wendong said with a smile, "She's fine. You don't have to worry about that. I'm not a man of my word." With that, he walked out of the woods. "I hope you are also a man of your word, and don't let me down." He Haoran stood blankly in the woods, unable to calm down, and had to betray his friends for the safety of his sister. For a righteous person, the pain in his heart can be imagined. At noon, Gao Huiyu came to ask Xia Wendong to go out for dinner, and the latter gladly agreed. Li Shuang felt upset at all and said to himself, "Why didn't anyone invite me to dinner?" His desk mate heard this and blinked at Li Shuang and said, "Desk mate, I'll treat you to dinner." Li Shuang turned around and saw that his face was green and he had no appetite. He hurriedly said, Thank you, thank you." I'm not really hungry at all. Wow, why did you throw up? Let me rub your chest. In the evening, in a small restaurant near number 1 middle school, Xie Wendong, Li Shuang and others are in the inner room, waiting for He Haoran to bring them here. Seeing it was almost 6 o'clock, Li Shuang asked angrily, Brother Dong, that boy He Haoran can't fool us. Xie Wendong shook his head and said, No. Volume 1 Juvenile Blood Chapter 13 _ How the Villain is Made. Yes. I'm sure he can come, and his eyes won't deceive me. As soon as he finished, a little brother hurried in. Brother Dong, He Haoran has led several people to come. Xie Wendong brightened his eyes and said loudly, You all know what to do, right? Yes, Brother Dong. Well, after World War I today, we will never find the Black Dragon Brotherhood in number 1 middle school again. Roar. Outside the restaurant, He Haoran brought Lu Jinglong and others to the restaurant and said to everyone, This is the restaurant. The food is quite good. It's my treat today. Lu Jinglong said with a smile, Why, you're rich, aren't you? When did you get paid for dinner? Come on, let's go and see if the food in this house is as good as Haoran said. A group of people walked into the restaurant one after another, and He Haoran walked at last, his face frighteningly pale. It's just that Lu Jinglong didn't notice that he never dreamed that his brother could push him into the fire pit. The crowd went into the restaurant and chose a big table to sit down. A man shouted, Boss, we have a guest. Come on out. Xie Wendong came out of the inner room with a smile on his face and asked, What do you want? I don't have any food or wine, but there are some sticks and knives. I don't know if it's to your taste. In a word, there was no thunder, and the restaurant was silent. A monkey-faced teenager stood up and looked at Xie Wendong, glancing at his mouth. Eyegrass? What are you spraying dung all over your mouth? If you want to die, I will help you. Xie Wendong smiled deeper and sweeter on his face, did not speak, raised his hand and snapped his fingers in the air. After the sound, no less than 30 people came out of the inner room, and more than a dozen people came in outside the door. The door was closed and locked from the outside, and even the windows were locked with iron bars. The whole hotel is like a cage. Don't plan to go out from the inside. Lu Jinglong immediately reflected it. He looked at He Haoran in disbelief and said, Haoran, you. No, no, no. No, no, no. How dare you betray me? Brother Long, I'm sorry. The latter bowed his head and whispered, so low that he could not hear himself. As soon as other people saw He Haoran's appearance, they also realized that the monkey-faced boy kicked him in the stomach. My God, your mother, Brother Long is so kind to us that you betray him. Are you still a fucking human being? Beast. He Haoran knelt on the ground and burst into tears. Brother Long, I'm sorry. When I rescue my sister, you can kill me if you want. Lu Jinglong ignored He Haoran, looked at Xie Wendong and said, I fell for this today. Let me be clear. Who are you? Xie Wendong he. You are not as clever as your brother. I'm not the boss of number 1 middle school. Who else do you think I can be? Xie Wendong. Yes, it's my little brother. Today, I just want to discuss with Brother Long how this Black Dragon Brotherhood should be disbanded. Lu Jinglong changed his face and said, Brother Dong, I'll stay and do whatever you want, but I hope you can let the other brothers go. Xie Wendong shook his head and said, I can't do this. I've spent so much energy trying to get you backbones to hit a middle school together. Hey, Brother Long is also sensible, so I won't say any more. Volume 1 Juvenile Blood Chapter 14 _ How the Villain is Made. The monkey-faced teenager shouted to Lu Jinglong, Brother Long, let's fight with them. Then he rushed to Xie Wendong. Xie Wendong stood still, and when the monkey-faced boy approached more than 1 meter, he flew a foot next to him and kicked it in the face of the monkey face. The impact of the monkey face itself, coupled with the power of this side kick, can be imagined. The monkey's face was kicked and fell to the ground. It was Gao Chong who did not speak and kicked in the face of the monkey who fell to the ground. The continuous cry of the monkey's face was like a hammer, hitting Lu Jinglong and everyone under him in the heart, with a cold sweat on the top of his head. Looking at the monkey face that could not afford to fall to the ground, Lu Jinglong said. I just heard that Brother Dong is tough enough, and it's true to see him today. Xie Wendong said. I have never been soft on the enemy. Lu Jinglong said loudly. Since you came to number 1 middle school, I never seem to have offended you. Why are you doing this to me? Xie Wendong sneered and said, Only one tiger is allowed in a forest. If there is another one, it will be like a thorn in the eye and a thorn in the flesh. If I don't touch you, you will touch me sooner or later. So the Black Dragon brothers must disappear. Now you are my worst enemy. Lu Jinglong is also a man. Knowing that he can't hide today, he might as well risk everything and say loudly, If you are really a character, you will fight me one-on-one. If I lose, I will do whatever you want. How about letting us go if you lose? Xie Wendong! Exclamation point. You are not qualified to bargain with me now. You are just a trapped animal in a cage. With a wave of his hand, everyone understood what the boss meant and hugged him. The figure of Lu Jinglong and others was buried by a sea of people. Gao Chong brought a chair for Xie Wendong to sit down and stood beside him staring at the court. At the same time, he was also protecting Xie Wendong for fear that it would be dangerous if the scene was too chaotic. Xie Wendong sat in the chair, his legs crossed, his fingers tapping on the armrest of the chair, and the corners of his mouth picked up. In front of dozens of people torn together, broken sound, miserable voice intertwined into a ball. Human nature is completely lost here, and people are waving their weapons like crazy and hitting their own kind. At this time, the small restaurant is almost the same as hell. The ground was red with blood. The chaos in the restaurant didn't last more than 10 minutes, and everything quieted down. In the field, Lu Jinglong and his brothers lay on the ground, covered in blood. Take the people out and clean the place. Xie Wendong stood up. The brother outside the door opened the lock. Xie Wendong and his party came out. Xie Wendong breathed a long breath when he smelled the fresh air outside. He Howren chased him out, grabbed Xie Wendong and asked loudly, Where's my sister? Xie Wendong pulled away the hand holding his clothes and said with a strange face, Your sister is not here again. How do I know where she is? As soon as he Howren heard that his eyes were red, he said loudly, Xie Wendong, do you talk about credibility? You are not a human being. Xie Wendong smiled, ignored He Howren and turned to leave. He Howren wanted to chase him again, but he was stopped by others, so he had no choice but to shout and scold. But in the distance came Xie Wendong's voice, I respect you as a man. I hope you can come to me tomorrow and conquer the world with me. Xie Wendong, thank you for wearing a human skin. What did you do to my sister? After listening to this, He Howren earned a lot of money. Volume 1 Juvenile Blood Chapter 14 _ How the Villain is Made. Pricked, but the hands and feet were killed by several people. Li Shuang came over, patted him on the shoulder and said, Brother Dong sent your sister home long ago. With that, a group of people let him go and ran in the direction of Xie Wendong. He Howren froze for a moment, hurried home, pushed open his sister's door, and saw that her sister was sitting on the ground with a big doll in her arms and many other puppets thrown on the bed. When he saw his brother coming back, he pounced on him and said in a loud voice, Brother, your friend is so kind. You have bought me so many beautiful puppets. He even took me roller skating. Since He Howren's family only relies on his father to earn some money, it is already a big expense for them to go to school. Although they know that their sister likes puppets, they really can't afford it. Seeing his sister's smiling face, He Howren sighed and silently said to himself, Xie Wendong, what kind of person are you? Only a week after the start of school in number 1 middle school, the Black Dragon Brotherhood did not know the reason. The eldest Lu Jinglong and his backbone were all seriously injured and were admitted to the hospital. The gang was leaderless and announced its dissolution. On the second day after the dissolution of the Black Dragon Brotherhood, the organization led by the eldest brother also announced its dissolution. At this time, the organization known as the Wendong Society sprang up, quickly netting scattered people, and the number increased to hundreds, and schools far and near were all frightened. The students recite the legend of Wendong Society to each other, and Xie Wendong's reputation is well known for a time. At that time, The underworld in J City made waves again, and a mysterious organization called the Tigers rose suddenly with huge financial resources and quarreled constantly with the three underground gangs. It is said that the Tigers, backed by the mafia forces in Russia, have set up branches in northeast China to engage in smuggling. Then, the boss of the Axe Gang, one of the three major gangs, clashed with three young men on his way to visit relatives in the countryside and was stabbed to death with $37. The Axe helped the civil strife for a while, and its chassis was frantically robbed by various gangs. J City underground forces continue to scuffle, wind and smoke rise again. On Sunday, the sky is clear. J City Business District is a sea of people. After people have accumulated energy for a week, they can finally come out and erupt, with smiling faces on every face. Xia Wendong wanted to sleep in at home, but the phone rang after 7 o'clock. Wendong's father came to Xia Wendong's room, picked up his sleepy son and said, "Wendong, wake up, your phone." Xia Wendong came out of the room sleepily and muttered, "The person on the phone had better give me a perfect reason, or I will beat him with peach blossoms all over his face. Pick up the phone and say loudly, 'Hello, whoever you are, you'd better give me a good reason.'" The voice of Zhao Didi came from the other side of the phone. "Oh, who made our brother Dong angry? He was so angry." Xia Wendong immediately disappeared when he heard this voice. He was embarrassed to say, "Ah, the sister you. I'm sorry. I didn't know it was you. Oh, what can I do for you? It's so boring at home today, Sunday. Please go shopping with me." "That's right. All right, what time are you going?" "The sooner the better. You just got up. Let's make it 8 o'clock. "Good. Where can I find you?" Let's meet at the gate of Chelin building. How's it going?" "Okay, no problem." "Then it's settled." No. Volume 1 Juvenile Blood Chapter 14 How the Villain is Made. "I'm late, but I don't have the patience." "I see, miss. I'll be on time." "Well, that's it. Bye-bye. See you later." "Goodbye." Xia Wendong quickly ran to the bathroom, washed his face and brushed his teeth in 5 minutes. He went back to the room to put on his school uniform and said to Wendong's father, "Dad, my friend is looking for me to go shopping. I'm going out first." Wendong's father said, "Come back early." "Got it." Xia Wendong came to Chelin building by bus and looked at his watch. It was all right. It was 5 minutes to 8. Xia Wendong stood at the door of the building, nodding his feet and looking around, but there was a sea of people, big and small. Thought, where can so many people see Gao Huiyu? Xia Wendong was in a hurry when someone patted him on the shoulder. Looking back, it was Gao Huiyu with a smile on her face. Today, she wears a small pink and white dress, which makes her look more slim and more mature. Xia Wendong looked at his eyes and asked curiously, "Sister Yu, how did you find me?" Gao Huiyu smiled and said, "Don't you know you are very conspicuous?" Xia Wendong scratched his head and said, "Sister Yu, stop joking. Why am I conspicuous?" Gao Huiyu said with a smile, "Fool, you are the only one who wears a school uniform in the street on Sunday." "I don't know yet." Xia Wendong looked around. Isn't it? He was the only one wearing a school uniform, and he really felt like he stood out from the crowd. Exclamation point. I used to dress like this on the street, but I didn't expect to be able to make such a joke. Gao Huiyu pulled him and said, "All right, let's go, sister. I'll buy you a suit of clothes, or you'll be too embarrassed to stand next to me like this." With that, he pulled Xia Wendong into the Chelin building. Xia Wendong shook his head helplessly and said, "I still feel comfortable and energetic in school uniforms. Come on, don't be old-fashioned. I'm tired of wearing only one suit of clothes at the end of the day." Gao Huiyu pulled Xia Wendong for a long time and finally chose a set of Robin Hood casual clothes. After Xia Wendong changed into it, the person appeared much more lively. Gao Huiyu was very satisfied with this set and nodded to one side. Xia Wendong himself had no feeling. Seeing Gao Huiyu said yes, she went to the front desk to pay the bill. When Gao Huiyu saw it, Xia Wendong had already paid the money and came back. Seeing Gao Huiyu's unhappy face, Xia Wendong asked strangely, "Sister Yu, What's the matter with you? Gao Huiyu said angrily. Didn't you say I bought it for you? Why did you go to pay the bill? Xie Wendong said with a smile. Whoever pays the bill is the same. Anyway, you picked this suit. Even if you bought it for me, Gao Huiyu said with a toot of small mouth. How can that be the same? You go and return the clothes, and I'll buy them again. As soon as Xie Wendong heard it, he begged for mercy and said, Sister Yu, why don't you invite me to dinner later? I am much more interested in food than in clothes. After listening to this, Gao Huiyu thought for a moment and said, All right, I'll treat you to a big dinner later. Xie Wendong nodded hurriedly and said yes. Then the two began to go shopping. From more than 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock, Xie Wendong also has a deeper understanding of the experience of shopping. Usually, it seems that Gao Huiyu, who is generally physically fit, has surprisingly good physical strength when shopping in the mall. Volume 1 Juvenile Blood Chapter 14 _ How the Villain is Made. Even Xie Wendong, who often runs to school, is shocked and ashamed. And just look at it, try it, say yes after trying, and finally put it down and go. Finally, Xie Wendong saw a row of chairs in the mall, sat on it and said nothing. Angry Gao Huiyu kept saying that he was useless. Xie Wendong simply closed his eyes, revealing that you can say whatever you like. Anyway, I won't leave anyway. Gao Huiyu, who had not finished her last trip, had to compromise and go to dinner with Xie Wendong. After dinner, Gao Huiyu suggested going to disco. Xie Wendong didn't want to go, but Gao Huiyu, who looked interested, had no choice but to agree. The two men came to a downtown disco where the lights were dim and the roaring music was deafening. Xie Wendong feels that the drumming of the music is very powerful and can make people's blood boil after listening to it. He said to himself, no wonder there are so many fights. Listening to this kind of music is like taking stimulants. Gao Huiyu led Xie Wendong to sit down in a corner and asked him loudly, Wendong, what would you like to drink? Because the music was too low, Xie Wendong also shouted, I'll just have a Coke. Gao Huiyu nodded and went to the bar and asked for 2 colas. After coming back and sitting for a while, he dragged Xie Wendong to dance. When I came to the center of the venue, I danced with Gao Huiyu for a while, and then I was dizzy by the light. She spoke to Gao Huiyu and returned to her seat. While drinking Coke while watching Gao Huiyu dancing in the field, now she gives people a different feeling, a little less naive and a little more wild. The tight dress makes Gao Huiyu's slender body more exquisite and attractive. The long hair flying in the air surrounded her like a black silk. With this strenuous exercise, Gao Huiyu's face seemed to be covered with a layer of red clouds, and her beautiful figure became the brightest scenery in the field. While Xie Wendong was indulging in it, several young people leaned over Gao Huiyu and surrounded her in the middle, laughing and didn't know what to say. Xie Wendong was too far away to hear clearly, but when he saw Gao Huiyu's angry face, he knew what was going on. With a sigh, Xie Wendong walked over to Gao Huiyu. Gao Huiyu, who was entangled by the young man, could not help shouting Xie Wendong, but he turned around and smiled sweetly at him and said to several young people, I have no interest to accompany you to play. My boyfriend is here. Get out of here. When several young people saw Gao Huiyu suddenly smiled, they were stunned by the beauty of the moment and did not listen to the words behind them. Xie Wendong came behind them and coughed loudly, but there was no response. Having to pat one of them on the shoulder, the man woke up like a dream, stared back and asked, What are you doing, boy? Xie Wendong pointed to Gao Huiyu and said, She is my friend. Xie Wendong's words finally attracted the attention of these people, looked up and down at him, and one said, Boy, our brothers want to play with this beautiful friend of yours. If you are smart, get out of the way. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. Xie Wendong sneered. If you disappear in front of me now, I can take what you just said as a fart. I won't argue with you. I'll fuck you. Your fucking hair hasn't grown yet. Boy, you and our brothers are pretending to be pussy. What are you talking about? Hit him. Xie Wendong. Volume 1, Young People's Hot Blood Chapter 14 _ How Our Bad Guys Made One. One sentence angered several people. When they saw that Xie Wendong was young, a little thin, and he was still alone, they did not take him seriously at all. They all leaned towards him and prepared to take action. The writer's blood boiled when he thought of being able to show off his prestige in front of beautiful women. Xie Wendong saw their posture and knew that it was inevitable to fight. He looked at Gao Huiyu and saw that she was sticking out her tongue at him. He said in his heart, "What a beauty is a disaster. Since you want to fight, you can't hesitate." Before they were ready, he lifted his feet and kicked the young man on the left. The man didn't expect that the thin boy in front of him would take the initiative to attack. He was careless and kicked by Xie Wendong on the lower abdomen. He grunted and retreated. Seeing that Xie Wendong had made the first move, the others rushed forward. The people around them were already used to fighting here, and they stood at the side and watched with great experience. Gao Huiyu stood not far from Xie Wendong and looked at him with concern. Xie Wendong bent down to avoid the punch on him, took advantage of the opportunity to hug the other party by the waist, looked up suddenly, and his head hit the other party's chin hard. The man's body swayed a few times and fell to the ground and couldn't get up. Although he knocked down one of the opponents, he was kicked hard in the back, which made Xie Wendong grin in pain. One person lifted his leg and kicked him again. Xie Wendong didn't want to be entangled anymore. He dodged, grabbed his foot and pulled him back. The man could not stand steadily and fell to the ground. Xie Wendong stepped forward one step after another and kicked him hard in the face. The man fainted before he could even scream, and his nose bones sank deeply into his face. It is necessary to mention the human jaw here. The lower jaw is one of the vital parts of the body and is connected to the central nervous system of the human body. If you are hit hard, your brain will be blank for a period of time. Because of this, lower hooks are the most deadly in boxing. Volume 1 Juvenile Blood Chapter 15 _ How Bad Guys Are Made 1. The remaining two people felt some regret when they saw that Xie Wendong was so ferocious. But Xie Wendong did not give them a chance to regret. He stepped forward and punched the man who was closer to him in the face, who dodged hurriedly. As soon as Xie Wendong turned around and ignored him, he kicked another man. The man could still figure out how it was, but felt a great pain in his lower body, screamed and rolled all over the floor. The remaining one, who had no momentum just now, shouted and ran away. After a few steps, he was stopped by the onlookers. A stout man pushed him back and said, "Oh my God, I want to run before the play is over." The man did not run as far as he had retreated. He looked back and saw that his soul was half gone. It turned out that Xie Wendong was standing behind him, a pair of red eyes staring at him. "I don't know what to do." The man shouted and kept circling in the middle of the field. No one made way for him, and people enjoyed it as if they were watching a fight. Gao Huiyu came to Xie Wendong and gently took his hand and said nothing. Around him, she felt surrounded by an unprecedented sense of security. Xie Wendong slowly calmed down, took a few steps to catch up with the man, grabbed him by the collar and said, "Remember my name. My name is Xie Wendong." With that, he loosened his hand and walked out, holding Gao Huiyu's hand. The man, like a deflated ball, beached himself on the ground and froze at the back of Xie Wendong. "Ha ha! It is indeed a hero to produce a teenager. It's nice to be young enough to beat 4 adults." The speaker was about 40 years old, fat and with golden eyes, coming out of the crowd, followed by 3 people. When he heard the voice, Xie Wendong stopped, looked back at the middle-aged man and said, "I'm flattered. Can I help you?" Just finished. Gao Huiyu ran to the middle-aged man, took the man by the hand and said, "Uncle Li, why are you here?" The middle-aged man laughed and said, "I was going out to run errands, but I happened to be passing by. I came in to see how business was going. I didn't expect to see such a young hero." Seeing the middle-aged man praising Xie Wendong, Gao Huiyu felt sweet and said in a delicate voice, "Uncle Li, he is me, my friend." The middle-aged man laughed and said, "Xiao Yu, your friend is pretty good. I saw it just now. Can't be your boyfriend." Gao Huiyu's face was covered with pink, and Jiao Sheng said, "Uncle Li, you're just a friend. I'm ignoring you." With that, he walked out with Xie Wendong's clothes, and the latter nodded to the middle-aged man and was pulled out by Gao Huiyu. The middle-aged man smiled as they left, and said calmly to the person behind him, "You go and check out the details of this man. I want to know who he is." Xie Wendong and Gao Huiyu came out from the disco to walk in the street. Xie Wendong asked, "Sister Yu, who was that just now? I think you two know each other very well." Gao Huiyu smiled and said, "He is a friend of my father and brother." Although Xie Wendong met the middle-aged man for the first time, his feeling told him that the middle-aged fat man was not an ordinary person, which made him curious about Gao Huiyu's family and asked, "Sister Yu, what do your father and brother do?" Gao Huiyu bowed her head and hesitated and said nothing. Seeing her like this, Xie Wendong said hurriedly, "I just follow." Volume 1 Juvenile Blood Chapter 15 _ How Bad Guys Are Made 1. Just ask, Sister Yu, if it's hard to say, you don't have to say it. Gao Huiyu looked up and looked at Xie Wendong and said, "Let me tell you something. If not, maybe you want to go somewhere anyway, you will know sooner or later. My brother is the boss of the Green Gang." "What?" Xie Wendong stopped, looked miraculously at Gao Huiyu and asked loudly, "Your brother is the boss of the Green Gang?" Gao Huiyu nodded. "Hey, what are you doing? What a surprise." How can Xie Wendong not be surprised that the Green Gang is one of the three giants of J City, and its strength can also be imagined that the boss of the Green Gang can stomp his foot and tremble in the ground. "I didn't expect to be Gao Huiyu's brother." Xie Wendong suppressed his surprise and said, "No wonder you said your brother was a big shot before." He thought for a moment and asked, "That man worked for your brother just now?" Gao Huiyu nodded and said, "Yes. When my father was the boss of the Green Gang, he was there. He was a senior figure in the gang, and he was very kind to me." Xie Wendong said, "Well, I can see that." When he thought of something, Xie Wendong laughed. Gao Huiyu asked, "Hello. What's so funny?" Xie Wendong gasped and said, "9 times out of 10, the rumors are unbelievable. It is rumored that your sister is the mistress of the boss of the youth gang in number 1 middle school. Now it looks really ridiculous." Gao Huiyu blushed and said, "In the past, my brother went to pick up my sister from school, and some people I saw didn't know what was going on. Later, my sister was so angry that she never asked her brother to take it again. But the rumor spread." Xie Wendong asked, "Does your brother know about me fighting with your sister?" Gao Huiyu shook her head and said, "I don't think so. My sister never tells my brother about school." Xie Wendong listened to some rejoice but also some disappointed. He hopes that one day he can fight with giants like the Green Gang, and he also knows that his current strength cannot be compared with them, and he is afraid that he will be done with a touch of his finger. But he has a warm-blooded heart and an impulse to fight the strong. Xie Wendong and Gao Huiyu talked while walking, and their feelings were also getting closer. It was not until 4 o'clock in the afternoon that Xie Wendong sent Gao Huiyu home. Gao Huimei wanted him to go in and sit down, but Xie Wendong refused because of Gao Huimei's reason, waved to Gao Huiyu and left. Early the next morning, Xie Wendong went to Xinshin Billiards Hall to discuss the matter. The two talked for a long time in the back room, and no one knew what they said. Thanks to Wendong and Three Eyes, they didn't come out of the inner room until 10 o'clock. Walking to the door, Xie Wendong said, "Brother Zhang, after we are successful this time, there will be room for development. If we fail, they will never let us go. It will not end well at that time." He nodded with Three Eyes and said, "Brother Dong, I think if we make the news clear, we should have no problem with our influence to get rid of their old nest." Xie Wendong looked up, sighed and said, "Whether we can survive in J City in the future depends on this blow." With that, Xie Wendong walked out of the Xinshin Billiards Hall. When he came to the classroom, he was in time for the 4th class. This is the head teacher's lecture. When the teacher is dancing on the podium and spitting all over the sky. Thank you. Volume 1 Juvenile Blood Chapter 15 _ How Bad Guys Are Made 1. When Dong knocked on the door with his school bag and was about to return to his seat, when the teacher stopped him and asked angrily, "Xie Wendong, what have you been doing? Why did you come to class now?" Xie Wendong said, "I'm sorry, teacher. I took care of some things and didn't have time for class." The teacher pointed to him and said, "A student like you is hopeless. Get out of here and don't show up in my class again. The teacher always remembered that Xie Wendong made a fool of himself on the first day of school and wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to teach him a lesson. Ignoring him, Xie Wendong returned to his seat and said, "You have no right to drive me out of the classroom. You, get the fuck out of here." The teacher trembled with anger when he saw Xie Wendong's words as if he had farted. Xie Wendong looked at him and said, "Don't forget that you are a teacher. It is impolite to swear in front of so many students. I really wonder how your parents taught you and how to cultivate a scum like you. It seems that your parents are not good people either." The teacher is a little out of his mind. He is used to being arrogant at school. Suddenly some students dare to fight against him, which makes him a little angry. The teacher's remark also angered Xie Wendong and scolded himself, but he could not forgive him if he scolded his parents. Xie Wendong. Standing up slowly, Xie Wendong took out a knife from his pocket, a switch knife that changed his fate. The teacher was startled to see him take out his knife, pointed to Xie Wendong and asked in a trembling voice, "You? No, no, no. No, no, no. What are you going to do?" Xie Wendong did not say a word, but slowly pushed the blade out and fixed it. Then, with a sudden shake of his hand without warning, a white light flew straight to the teacher. The teacher crawled on the ground with a loud cry. "Ka!" The teacher on the ground looked up and looked back. The spring knife was nailed to the blackboard, and the blade was still shaking. The teacher swallowed and spat and looked at Xie Wendong. The latter was staring at him with demonic eyes, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. "Oh my God, there's nothing wrong with it." The teacher rushed out of the classroom with a loud cry and ran quickly to the headmaster's office. Ignoring the surprised eyes of the class, Xie Wendong went to the classroom door. When he got to the door, he winked at Li Shuang and walked out of the classroom. Li Shuang immediately understood what Xie Wendong meant and ran out of the classroom. Let's say that the teacher hurried to the principal's office, and the door didn't bother to knock, so he rushed in. After entering, the scene inside let the teacher stay for a while. The headmaster was cuddling a young female teacher sitting on a leather chair, one hand in the collar of her clothes and the other stroking the female teacher's lap. The headmaster was at a glamorous moment when he suddenly saw Xie Wendong's head teacher coming in a little angry. "I said, Lao Liang, can't you come in and knock next time?" As she said that, she put the female teacher down from her leg. The female teacher blushed slightly. She wanted to go out, but she was held by the headmaster. Lao Liang saw so much about this that he immediately woke up and said loudly, "Principal, there is..." No, no, no. A newcomer has put a knife on me, and he means to kill me." The headmaster whipped him with his eyes, touched the female teacher's hand and said, "You look like a bear. Even a student is so scared. It seems that I really have to consider whether I should use you in the future." Seeing sweat on top of his head, Lao Liang said in a low voice, Volume 1 Juvenile Blood Chapter 15 _ How Bad Guys Are Made 1. "Principal, that student's eyes are so terrible that you don't know." "No, no, no. No, no, no. No, no, no." The headmaster said, "Don't say these useless things. You're too timid to make so many excuses. You go out first and we'll talk about it later." With that, one hand touched the white leg exposed by the female teacher under her skirt. Lao Liang looked embarrassed and said, "Principal, you have to help me with this today. He made me lose face in front of the students like that." The headmaster is so horny now that he doesn't have the energy to control him. Seeing that he has no intention of leaving, he says loudly, "Damn it, are you done? You go out first and I'll see you later." As soon as Lao Liang saw the headmaster angry, he dared not say anything more. He turned out and closed the door with his hand back. Seeing that he was gone, the headmaster pulled the female teacher back into his arms, opened his mouth and gnawed at the female teacher's face. But the door that had just been closed opened again, and Lao Liang retreated pale. The headmaster saw that the sparse hair on the top of his head was almost standing up and scolded loudly, "Lao Liang, what are you doing back here? Get out of here." Before he had finished, the headmaster shut up, for another person came in outside the door, a student in uniform. Lao Liang, his head covered with sweat, turned to the headmaster and said, "No, it's not that I want to come back. It's him. No, no, no." The headmaster let go of the female teacher in the bad, stood up and said, "What's your name? How dare you? Don't you know I'm the principal?" The student smiled and said, "My name is Xie Wendong. Remember my name. You'll need it later." The headmaster asked, "Is it that you want to kill the teacher with a knife?" Xie Wendong said nothing and strode towards him. The headmaster trembled and asked, "Stop you." "No, no, no. What are you doing?" Xie Wendong went to the headmaster, picked up a bottle of ink on the table and played with it, and said, "I hope you and the teachers below you had better not mess with me in the future. You can still be your local emperor, otherwise don't blame me for pulling you down." The headmaster said angrily, "What the fuck are you? Talk like this in front of me. I'm telling you, in number 1 middle school, I'm the eldest. No one can command me." Xie Wendong said, "That was before, but it is different now. If you don't have presbyopia, go to the window and look out." With that, he smashed the ink bottle on the window glass. The headmaster looked at him and walked slowly to the window to look out. I saw the students standing on the playground outside, mostly with sticks in their hands. At the sight of the headmaster, they shouted in unison, "Wen Dong Hui! Wen Dong Hui! Wen Dong Hui! No, no, no. No, no, no." The sound was so loud that it was deafening. The headmaster was petrified by the sight and stood at the window dumbfounded. Took a while to reflect it. I couldn't believe it and looked at Xie Wendong in disbelief. Without saying anything, Xie Wendong turned around and walked out. He stopped at the door and said without looking back, "From now on here, I'm in charge." The headmaster looked at the empty door and said slowly, "He is the devil." Lao Liang and the female teacher stood on one side like a piece of wood, motionless for a long time. Outside the playground, Li Shuang, Gao Chong, Zhang Yanjiang and He Haoren looked at each other and smiled at each other. Li Shuang smiled at He Haoren and said, "What do you think? Follow Brother Dong. The underground forces of J City in the future will belong to us. Sooner or later, Wen Tung will be able to unify the underworld." He Haoren looked up to the sky and sighed and whispered, "I am willing to give my life to Brother Dong, but the only thing I feel guilty about is the dragon." Li Shuang patted him on the shoulder and said, "We all respect you as a red-blooded man, and it is because of this that Brother Dong accepted you. I can't talk, but I know there are some things I've done, so don't regret it. It is a kind of happiness to follow a person who is convinced and capable." Volume I Juvenile Blood Chapter 16 _ How the Villain is Made. 3 days later, during the lunch break, as soon as Xie Wendong came out of the class, he saw Gao Huimei standing in the corridor. Feeling a little strange, he asked, "Sister Gao, are you here to see me?" Gao Huimei rolled her eyes and said, "What do you think? Who else do I know here except you?" Seeing that there were so many people here, Xie Wendong smiled. "Come on, let's go for a walk on the playground." With that, he walked out. All the students went to dinner, and the usually lively playground became empty. Xie Wendong and Gao Huimei walked side by side on the runway. The two men did not speak, and some sank. Gao Huimei was the first to say, "Do you have any friends?" Xie Wendong froze slightly and said with a smile, "Of course there is." Gao Huimei shook her head and said, "I'm talking about the kind of friends you can talk to, not your brothers. If you have something personal to say to them?" When asked by Gao Huimei, Xie Wendong was really a little confused. He treated Li Shuang, Three Eyes and others as brothers, but when it came to heart talk, Xie Wendong secretly shook his head, not because he did not regard them as friends, but because the smell of brotherhood in such people was too strong to talk about it. Xie Wendong bowed his head, thought about it, and did not speak for a long time. Seeing this, Gao Huimei smiled and said, "If you like, I hope I can be your friend, the kind of friend you can talk to." Seeing Gao Huimei's sincere face, Xie Wendong felt a warm current in his heart. Although he had groups of brothers around him, there was an inexplicable sense of loneliness in the deepest part of his heart. Xie Wendong said sincerely, "Sister Gao, thank you. It's a privilege for me to make friends like you." Gao Huimei smiled and said, "So you agree?" Xie Wendong nodded and joked, "I'm afraid that Sister Gao is too bored to abandon me as a friend." Gao Huimei held out her hand in front of Xie Wendong and said with a smile, "We will be friends from today. If you have something on your mind, come to me. After all, I am a little older than you, and maybe I can help you solve it." Xie Wendong said nothing and took Gao Huimei's small hand. Feeling the tenderness in my hands, I felt some ripples when I thought of the fascinating battle in the painting studio that day. The breeze blew and woke Xie Wendong up and let go of Gao Huimei's hand. Gao Huimei blushed, changed the subject and said, "I actually underestimated you. I didn't expect you to bring down the Black Dragon Brotherhood so soon. Now even the headmaster dare not touch you. You are a real bully in number 1 middle school." Xie Wendong shook his head and said, "No matter how good it is in number 1 middle school, it's just a school. This is not what I want." Gao Huimei said, "It seems that your ambition is also quite big. Now that you have a gang, you have hundreds of brothers. What else do you want?" Xie Wendong looked at Gao Huimei and said silently, "In fact, I don't know what I want, but I want to develop, and the current situation has not satisfied me." Xie Wendong once asked himself the same question, but he couldn't find the answer. Gao Huimei worried, "You have reached the limit of your development at school. Do you want to develop into society?" Xie Wendong nodded and said, "I do have this plan in mind, and it is in progress." Gao Huimei grabbed Xie Wendong's sleeve and said, "You should know that people in society are not better than students." Volume I Juvenile Blood Chapter 16 _ How the Villain is Made. Much smarter but also much better. You can be king at school, but in society it's nothing. I know that. I'll be very careful too. No. If you have any difficulties, I hope you can come to me. I may be able to help you." Xie Wendong nodded and said, "Sister Gao, if one day I will find you, I hope you can remember today's words." Xie Wendong and Gao Huimei talked a lot on the playground, and they also had a deeper understanding of Gao Huimei. In fact, she is not as strong as she looks, and like herself, she is a little confused about life and is looking for her dream. Xie Wendong compares her with Gao Huiyu and feels that they each have their own characteristics. One is mature and stable. The other is naive and lovely. Both are attractive girls. When the class bell rang, the two walked back from the playground. The two obviously had a close relationship. Xie Wendong said to Gao Huimei, "Sister, I'm going back to the classroom first. We're talking when we have a chance." Gao Huimei nodded with reluctance and said, "All right, are you free this evening?" Xie Wendong thought for a moment and said, "If there is no accident, you should be free. What can I do for you?" Gao Huimei said, "How about we go to dinner tonight?" Seeing Xie Wendong nodding and saying yes, Gao Huimei turned and left. Looking at the far back of Gao Huimei, Xie Wendong was a little confused. He knows that he is attracted by Gao Huimei's maturity, but in his heart, Gao Huiyu's naive figure emerges from time to time. This makes Xie Wendong very embarrassed and doesn't know what he should do. Xie Wendong has a habit of not thinking about things he doesn't understand. Anyway, if he can't get a result, why waste his energy? To put it bluntly, this is also an ostrich mentality. A month later, in the residential area near Ghost D Hall in the south of J City. Dang. There was a knock at the door, and an impatient voice came from the room. "Who is it? What's the matter?" "Hello? I'm from the electricity company. I charge for electricity," said a tall, thin, young boy. "Damn it. Haven't you just finished collecting it? Why are you collecting it again?" Grass. After hearing this, the teenager's face changed, but he immediately said, "Recently, someone said that there was electricity theft around here. I came to check it on purpose. Please open the door and let me have a look." Grass, the real chicken is troublesome. Wait a minute. There was a noise in the room, and after a while, the door opened and a long-faced young man of 23 or 4 came out. As soon as the young man came out, he suddenly saw a large group of people standing at the door. Knowing that it was not good, he turned and wanted to run. But it was too late, and a few people in front of them pulled a knife out of their clothes and couldn't say a word. They came forward and slashed at the young man with a long face, and the young man snorted and fell into a pool of blood. The people at the back did not stay, rushed into the house and cut down when they saw everyone. For a moment, more than a dozen people in the room were caught unprepared. Some people are still smoking white powder, do not understand what is going on. The body sharp and confused was stabbed several times. After a while, more than a dozen people were cut all over and lay on the ground. The men cleaned up the white powder and took it all with them. A man said to the teenager who had just spoken, "Brother Chong, how many women are there in this room? What shall we do with them?" The teenager heard the sound and came over. Look. Volume I Juvenile Blood Chapter 16 _ How the Villain is Made. Several women, afraid of hugging each other, said, "Let's go," regardless of them. A group of people quickly came out of the room, hid the knife in their clothes and went to the disco. The leading teenager was Gao Chong. Ghost Disco, one of the hot business disco in the south of J City. Here, it is watched by an organization called the Mass Society with average strength. They can be said to be very lucky to be where they are today. The boss of the Chuanxing Club is nicknamed the Cat. If a person has a name, he or she has a good sex. Today, I saw some beautiful girls who were young in my eyes in Ghost Kuei. I've been entangling with a couple of brothers. Everyone in the disco knew him, and no one dared to stop him. The color cat hugged the most beautiful one, swam her hands on the girl's body and let out a lewd laugh in her mouth. What a great interest the sex cat is. A cold voice passed through the shocking music of the disco to the ears of the cat. The sex cat is clever. Let go of the girl and stand up to find the person to talk to. A boy of about 16 walked through the crowd and came over. The sex cat looked at him and said, "Was that you talking to me just now?" The teenager nodded and said nothing. Seeing that he was not old, but he had a super momentum on his body, the cat dared not underestimate him. "I don't know if the little brother came to me to play, or," he said with a smile. The teenager said, "I'm not interested in playing, but I am very interested in this venue." The cat froze, his face darkened and said, "What's the matter? Are you going to rob me?" Xiao Nian hey smile. "That's right. I think you are young too, so you might as well find some women to go home and enjoy yourself. What do you think of my idea?" The sex cat stared at the teenager and asked, "Who are you?" Seeing that he was not good, his men pulled out the knives from their clothes one after another. As soon as the dancers around looked at this posture, they knew that it was not good, and they all swarmed out of the ghost. But there were still more than 30 people left behind, who were brought by the boy. A little fat man brought a chair from the side. The teenager sat on it, tapped the handrail with his hand and said, "My name is Xie Wandong." Xie Wandong. The cat had a doubt on his face. He had never heard of such a person. He winked at the man on the side, and the man retreated slowly without leaving a trace. This little move did not hide Xie Wandong's eyes, looked at the cat and said, "You don't have to go to your men. If there is no accident, they are all waiting for you in the hospital." The cat was startled. Her face changed greatly, and said loudly, "You put them all." Xie Wandong took over and said, "They can't get up anymore." The cold sweat on the cat's head came out, wiped it with his hand and asked, "Little brother, do we have a grudge?" The porn cat searched repeatedly in his heart, and he didn't remember messing with such a person. Xie Wandong stood up and said, "Lust cat, I'm telling you, I'm here to rob you today. There's not so much nonsense. Don't waste your time." With a wave of his hand, he walked to one side. The 30-odd people he brought understood that this was the meaning of attack and drew a knife to pounce on the lecherous cats. Although the men of the sex cat are all adults, but the number has fallen behind, surrounded by dozens of people, it is difficult to protect themselves but barely cope with it. These dozens of people are not old, but they are all desperate to fight with knives in their hands. Volume I Juvenile Blood Chapter 16 _ How the Villain is Made. Unexpectedly greet the key point. After a while, Cat's men have fallen several people. The little fat man who carried the chair for Xie Wandong was Li Shuang, who roared out a knife and pounced on the cat. Seeing that Li Shuang is ferocious, he may not be an opponent, so he pulls out a black May 4th pistol from his back and points at Li Shuang. Li Shuang was startled and stopped at once. The sex cat laughed and said, "You go! Come on! Come on! I think your knife is fast or my gun is fast. Ha ha!" A drop of sweat fell from Li Shuang's face and was pointed at with a gun without fear. It was a lie to the ghost. Li Shuang's hand holding the knife also trembled a little. Just when the cat was smug, the arm holding the gun had a great pain and then lost consciousness. As soon as the hand was released, the gun fell to the ground. The color cat looked around unbelievably and saw that the girl who had just been frivolous held a dagger in her hand and stabbed it deeply into her arm. The girl's face was with a seductive smile. The sex cat gave a loud cry, pushed the girl away, turned and ran. When Li Shuang saw something bad, he bent down and picked up a chair and smashed it at the cat. The chair fell on the cat's back with a whistling sound, and the chair was smashed to pieces. The porn cat fell to the ground. As usual, this heavy blow would have made it impossible for the cat to get up, but now it was a matter of life and death. He showed a strong desire for survival. As soon as he got down, he got up again and ran to the back door to withstand the pain of tearing and moving his back. Li Shuang was stunned and then strode after him. The sex cat ran to the back door and was delighted. As long as he ran out, with his familiarity with the terrain here, no one could find him. The porn cat pulled the door open and suddenly froze, his face constantly sweating. A man nearly 1.8 meters tall stood in the doorway with an 1-foot-long knife in his hand. At the moment he opened the door, he stabbed deeply into his belly. Crimson blood flowed on the knife from the belly of the colored cat and dripped on the ground along the knife body. The sex cat grabbed the man's hand and looked at him with unwilling and disbelieving eyes. The big man smiled coldly and pedaled his foot on the cat's chest. The cat was kicked out for several steps, touched the wound on his abdomen and said, No, I am not reconciled to it." The big man came forward to wipe the blade of his hand with his clothes, put it back under his clothes, took a piece of black paper from his arms and put it in the pocket of the cat's coat, then turn around and walk away. The big man did not say a word from his appearance to his departure, but the most difficult thing for the cat to forget was the eye-catching scar between his eyebrows. The cat's body went straight down, and the blood from the abdominal wound followed his body, drawing a beautiful red arc in the air. In the disco, few of the men of the sex cat can stand, and a few people can still stand at the end of their strength, and their bodies are teetering. The big man came in through the back door, looked at the situation, smiled on his face, nodded to Xie Wendong and flopped at the regiment. On October 11th, a big firefight broke out in and near the Ghost D Hall in the south of J City. The cat, the boss of the Chunxing Society, died, several people were killed and dozens of people were seriously injured. At that time, there was a lot of fighting in the underworld in J City, and the dead occurred from time to time. The police were accustomed to such cases and did not find out why at the scene, so they simply dealt with the matter as a case of seeking revenge against their enemies in the underworld. In the end, it came to nothing, but the underworld knows that there is a black post on the corpse of the sex cat. I don't know what it means. On the second day after the fall of the Chunxing Society, an organization called Wendong Society robbed the Ghost Disney Hall. Although some of the nearby gangs were dissatisfied, they did not gain much from fighting with the Wendong Society for several times. In the end, they had to compromise and no longer compete with the Wendong Association. From then on, the Wendong Society became the new owner of the Ghost, which was recognized by the gangs in the south of the city. Xie Wendong's Wendong Association finally stepped into the bottomless quagmire of the underworld. Volume 1 Juvenile Blood Chapter 17 _ How the Villain is Made. Xinshin Billiards Hall. It was full of people, men and women, and most of the women were young. Some of these people played billiards, some chatted in small groups, and everyone's face was covered with excitement. There were 6 people sitting around a round table in the back room. Xie Wendong sat in the middle with a slight frown. 3 Eyes said loudly, "Brother Dong, we can make money on our own when we have our own place. Pornography, gambling and drugs are the fastest business for gangsters to get money. Brother Dong, you see we are." Li Shuang laughed and said, "Brother Dong, I think we'll come to Huang. That is, you can make money and your brother can get a little cheaper. Brother 3 Eyes, don't you think?" Three eyes crossed him. Grass. You can never see the back of your head like a bear. I'm telling the truth. No, no, no. No, no, no. Xie Wendong interrupted the two and said, I hate people who engage in prostitution, and I won't do it myself. Do you have any opinions? Li Shuang shrank his neck, stood up and said loudly, Brother Dong said exactly what I wanted to say just now. Nothing matters to me. None of us are forced to be prostitutes. No, no, no. No, no, no. Gao Chong interrupted Li Shuang's nonsense. I think poison should be okay, but we have no connections and no capital. Gao Chong a sentence to wake up, but also to the point, no matter how to discuss, if there is no capital is also in vain. Xie Wendong nodded and said, one of the main purposes of this meeting is to let everyone pay attention and let the club have a certain economic foundation. After listening, everyone did not speak and bowed their heads in contemplation. After a while, the three eyes said to everyone, Do you know there is a tiger gang? He Howard nodded and said, I've heard of it. It seems that gangs in Russia have set up gangs in China to facilitate smuggling. Brother Three Eyes is not trying to get their attention, is he? Hey, hey! Three Eyes said with a smile. They often smuggle in the suburbs recently. I don't know what it is, but I guess it should be very valuable. If we rob him all of a sudden, the gang money will come. Zhang Yanjiang shook his head and said, The tiger can fight inextricably with the three underground gangs, and its power can be imagined. There is no doubt that we hit the stone with an egg, and the consequences are more than we can afford. Xie Wendong looked at everyone and asked, Brother Zhang, how much money do we have now? Now all the money in the gang is in the hands of Three Eyes, and Xie Wendong only knows about exactly how much he does not know. Three Eyes thought for a moment and said, There can be more than 40,000 but less than 50,000. If you sell the white powder you snatched from the porn cat, it will cost almost 70,000. Xie Wendong shook his head that the money would not solve any problem for a fledgling gang at all. After thinking about it, Xie Wendong touched the May 4th pistol he had snatched from the sex cat in his waist and said loudly, I want a gun. Who has a way to get it? Gao Chong smiled and said, Brother Dong, I have an idea about this. It can only be a good gun. Xie Wendong said, Changzi, tell me. Gao Chong whispered, I have a relative who lives in a village near a city. He is full of mountain areas. Villagers usually earn a little money by hunting in the mountains. The government is also lax in gun control there. I used to go to that relative's house to play, but he was alone. Volume 1 Juvenile Blood Chapter 17 _ How the Villain is Made. There are 3 shotguns and a May 4th pistol at home, which is only what I saw. According to him, his family even has grenades from the War of Resistance against Japan. It's probably out of date and out of use. Xie Wendong graciously thought for a moment and said, Brother Zhang, take 50,000 quick money for Changzi. Changzi will go to your relatives later and buy as much as you can with this money, especially the May 4th pistol, which is convenient to carry with you, and the safety of the gun itself is also high. Gao Chong smiled, Brother Dong, I'll take care of this. Wait and see. Xie Wendong said to the Three Eyes, Brother Zhang, help me find out how many people there are in the trading place of the Tiger Gang. Let's just do him this time. Three Eyes shone with cold light and said, Brother Dong, don't worry. I must have checked it out clearly. Everyone saw that Xie Wendong had made a decision, although psychologically there was some fear, but as long as Brother Dong said he could do it, he was never unsuccessful. Xie Wendong's prestige has long taken root in everyone's hearts. They are young people and they all aspire to do some earth-shaking events, and they are more or less looking forward to and excited about robbing the tigers. Xie Wendong glanced at everyone present, then turned to Zhang Yanjiang and said, Yanjiang, tell me about the formulation of the gang system. Zhang Yanjiang nodded to Xie Wendong, stood up and said loudly, The country has its own law and every family has its own rules. Now that we have set up a gang, we should have a complete system. I won't say much about the system. Here are the rules. Let's take a look at them later. Let me talk about the system in the club. Zhang Yanjiang took a breath and looked at the people. Seeing that everyone was listening carefully, Zhang Yanjiang smiled and said, "The name of our gang is Wundong Society, and there are 4 halls below, namely, Dragon Hall, Tiger Hall, Leopard Hall, and another law enforcement hall. There is also an institution that is dark. I think we all understand the meaning of the 4 halls here. I would like to explain that Brother Dong specially set up this organization in order to enable us to get more information, but also for the systematization of intelligence. The dark scope of work is to investigate all the information that is useful to us by all means, and it will be the eye of our Wundong society in the future. So I think it's clear to everyone." With that, Zhang Yanjiang sat down. Xie Wundong said, "Let me tell you your positions. It is only temporary now, and there will be changes in the future. Zhang Jidong is the head of Dragon Hall. Li Shuang is the owner of Tiger Hall. He Haoren is the lord of Leopard Hall. Zhang Yanjiang is the lord of Law Enforcement Hall. And Gao Chong is in charge of the dark. Does everyone understand?" All with excitement on their faces, they said in unison, "I see, Brother Dong." Li Shuang touched his head and asked, "The girls in the meeting don't know which hall to share." Xie Wundong froze. 3 eyes stepped on Li Shuang under the table, sarcastically said, "Grass, all good for you." Li Shuang was trampled by 3 eyes, but when he heard what he said, the big head nodded. "All right, give it all to me. I want it all." I looked at my nose 3 times and almost lost my breath. Xie Wundong smiled and said, "They won't give it to anyone. I have other plans." Li Shuang wilted as soon as he heard this, stared and snickered 3 times and stopped talking. The girls mentioned by Li Shuang are the pretty girls who were entangled by the sex cats in the first place. They are all students from number 1 middle school at home.